You are now 10 minutes away from a better day in homeschool education. It's the homeschool pep talk we all need. See Mom Learn is a podcast for the perpetually curious, created by me, Tahira Goldson, a lifelong learner, home educator, and talent development professional. I've worked in training in Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and right here at home. It's part of what inspired me to homeschool. In the desert or in the rice fields, in the Horn of Africa or in the seat of the EU, learning was always happening all around me. I remember chatting with a nurse in Antananarivo about how her practice differed from her training. She gave an example of an asthmatic patient, very severe, that lived far from the city. A wife and a mom living in intergenerational housing. She frequently found herself without an inhaler. The nurse coached her patient in breathing exercises for when she was anxious. If your mother-in-law is stressing you out and you feel an asthma attack coming on, I need you to go for a walk. And soon, the patient's inhaler was lasting longer and longer. It was a case of this medical professional taking cues from her environment and evolving rather than throwing her hands up. But it was also a case of our rural mom learning to cope with strategies that reach beyond prescription medicine. Experiences like these led me to research homeschooling more. If adults could learn and adapt and grow as needed, of course children could. Of particular interest to me is low-tech, low-cost options. How could I homeschool with minimal cost and still get maximum education benefit for my household? Now, you may not be an education nerd such as myself, but I can put my nerdiness to work for you. Today, I'll share 5 tips for homeschooling at low or no cost. First, don't fight the freedom. Keyword, being free. You've heard me champion the public domain before, but let's dive a little deeper. All kinds of books, art, film, and television are free and legally owned by the public. That's you and me, usually after around 75 years of use. The term public domain refers to creative materials that are not protected by intellectual property, such as copyright, trademark, or patent laws. The public own these works, not an individual author or artist. Anyone can use public domain work without obtaining permission, but no one can ever own it. Talk about making education accessible. I love the concept of the public domain. Pulling from the public domain doesn't just teach the creative work, it teaches the concept of shared ownership for the benefit of us all. Assign a few early American biographies to your scholars so that they can learn firsthand accounts of the lives of figures in history. Do a unit where your learner chooses a character from the public domain and writes an original story. Dracula goes to middle school. The Queen of Hearts and her secret crush. The possibilities are endless, and the price is free. LibriVox audiobooks, Project Gutenberg, and archive.org are all resources at your fingertips. Second, some people homeschooling use the resources primarily from the public domain, and that comes with some challenges. While math may not have changed much, science is updated more frequently. A lot of works we consider classics are also classist, or they're xenophobic, and they often have slurs baked right in. Famously, English speakers get world knowledge wrong, like a lot. You know Peking? Yeah, that was an attempt at Beijing. Bombay was actually Mumbai. Madagascar is actually called Malagasy by the locals. And often, we aren't just saying it wrong, we're just wrong overall. Think about the use of terms like West Indian. Not great. But when you're aware that you have room to grow, we have the amazing opportunity to grow and learn and correct. So yes, scour the public domain, but whenever possible, look for own voices material. This applies for present day too. And it's always beautiful when you rediscover a work that passes the test of time and sensibility. Tip number 2 is to look for resources in living color. If studying early America, be sure to include the narratives written by the indigenous, Black, and immigrant people themselves in their own voices. They absolutely do exist, and what a privilege it is to learn their stories. One more thing, or we can call this tip 2A. So often among homeschoolers, I hear the justification for the use of literature riddled with slurs with this argument: the literary value outweighs the damage. Or, I use these as learning opportunities. If you've heard this argument, or if you've made it, I'd ask you to explore where that comes from. Why are you so focused on protecting living stories rather than living people? As we pass down the heritage of hate and othering as learning opportunities, what exactly are we trying to teach? And finally, ask yourself, and I mean really sit down and consider, have you ever heard anyone from the communities targeted by these terms make any of these arguments? Because I've been alive a long time and never have I ever. Tip number 3, support your local library. This could be the most radical thing you do today. Continuing the theme of shared access, community spaces, and making learning resources available, the local library does all of these things, and it's doing it well. Ebooks, audiobooks, graphic novels, oh my! Invest in a CD or DVD player and leverage the library's underused collection of movies and music. Craft with video libraries like Crafty and Creative Bug. Unleash your scholars' YouTube dreams by having them learn video editing and LinkedIn Learning, free with most library cards. Finally, make friends with your librarian. They know things. Looking for historical fiction to supplement your study of the Civil War? Want to know all the new titles? Want to recommend a title that the library should carry? It can all begin with a chat with your local librarian. Okay, only 2 tips left. Tip number 4 is to pay it forward. Give away or sell your old books. It helps another homeschool family and it frees up your shelf space. And plenty of moms use resale to fund their purchases for the upcoming school year. We're coming in for a landing. Maybe you're like me and you bought a planner for $50 or a gilded journal that you thought were too beautiful to write in. And you're $50 poor and still writing in the same 25-cent, one subject, spiral-bound notebook. Tip number 5 is that there is no gift like a blank page. Before you go buy a to-do pad, worksheets, consumable workbooks, designer planners, and journals, consider making it simple. A simple notebook is the most customizable, and it allows you to teach all the subjects. When I was a teenager in Atlanta, I used to ride the subway line from end to end, writing poetry and essays, fueled by people watching. One day, I realized a girl my age was watching me and with her mouth open. "Hi," I said. "What could you possibly be doing?" she replied. "Yeah, I'm writing." "Yeah, right, but what are you writing down? Where did you get the words from? Like, did you memorize it?" "No," I answered. "I'm making it up as I go along." She was floored. Likewise, many years later, when my kiddo was at the end of her rope with practicing handwriting, she saw me writing a few pages of journal entries. Without a word, she grabbed her notebook and her pen, and she started writing a poem. The blank page was calling her, too. And it only cost 25 cents. There you have it. Explore the public domain, look for diverse voices, leverage the library, pay it forward, and don't underestimate the power of a simple notebook. Until next time, sending you love, light, and living books from See Mom Learn.